Hello everybody, this is Sakshi from Tree Space Nets, and I got the opportunity to talk with Sean Campbell from Canopy Crafts, who is a prominent tree net artist and a business entrepreneur from Central California. So in the interview, we talk about topics derived from questions that I saw floating around on different social media sources concerning building tree nets. So we talk about things like building materials that are typically being used. We talk about safety concerns. We talk about tree protection and also experimental projects. All of the online links to find Canopy Craft are going to be located in the YouTube video description below. So my goal with interviewing tree net weaving artists is to create an open forum where we can discuss topics of concern as well as give ourselves a chance to learn from and inspire each other to kind of push this art form out to its maximum potential, as well as focusing on increasing safety and reducing our environmental impact by making decisions based upon tested and proven construction methods. I hope that you find the interview interesting as well as informative, and so let's get to it.
All right, good.
There it is.
Sounds like we're ready to go here. Doing our first ever online interview with really a tree net artist. For me, it's sort of like it's a hobby, it's a cool thing, but it's also this new emerging sort of art form. And the idea behind wanting to do the interview really is because I see you first as an artist and somebody who's producing kind of installation art pieces which are actually functional. So for me, that's super interesting. My wife is an artist, and I've been doing art for quite a long time as well, and really kind of searching for something that was new and interesting. And it was your video series online that got me interested in this. I messaged you a few months ago and was like, all right, I'm starting. and so, yeah, now here I am actually talking to you, and I've done a few things myself. So, since I haven't introduced who you even are, just tell me who you are, what you do.
Yeah, my name is Sean, and I have a net company called Canopy Craft, and weave tree nets, which I'm guessing is going to be a lot of the guests on this. But yeah, I weave tree nets and do it professionally, do installations on for people's backyards or businesses. But I also teach courses online on how to weave tree nets as well, and I have the first course, and then I'm working on an advanced weaving course right now that I'll be releasing shortly. And besides that, I also have had some fun making some experimental weaving videos on, for social media, YouTube, that sort of thing. So I like to get creative and see what this art form is capable of, and how far we can push. I mean, I guess that's kind of the case with every weaver. They kind of want to see what's possible and what unique thing they can bring to it.
Yeah. Cool. So what influenced you, or who influenced you? How did you first come into contact with this kind of thing and say, "Oh, I think that's something cool I'd like to try"?
Yeah. So growing up, there were these kind of secret nets that people just kind of did in the woods. No one really knew who did them, or you kind of were like, maybe this guy did it, I'm not sure. And it was just like a fun thing to try and find them, like a scavenger hunt, or have someone kind of let you in on the secret. And so that was a lot of fun, and I kind of forgot about it. During COVID, moved back home to where I grew up, and then we kind of were going to these nets and trying to find some. And eventually we kind of found all the nets we could find based off of social media pictures and stuff. And so I was like, well, what if we learn how to make nets? So that was kind of the next thing. I guess really you could just say it was all like COVID boredom, ton of time on your hands.
Okay.
Just trying to find a fun hobby to do. And so I taught myself in combination. So I was kind of teaching myself, seeing those wild nets out there. Some of the net masters, I think they had some videos out there on how not to highline, Charlie's Webb's, Lonzo Goes. I think it's pretty influential. Obviously, TreeNet Willie. I mean, these are the masters. So
Yeah, yeah, sure.
yeah, just kind of like a little bit of trying to figure it out from the pictures, and then they had some sparse videos here and there online
Yeah.
as well. Alonzo I don't know if he had made his tutorials or not yet. I can't remember. But then I did that thing I teach in the class, which is the upside down table with some
Yeah.
yarn in the backyard. And
Yeah.
after trying that a million times and being like, what were those knots? And like taking pictures on the wild nets, trying to figure out what the knots were and like searching knot websites. Yeah, I was able to kind of figure it out and then just slowly building from there.
That's cool. I think that that's pretty unique that actually you kind of got to see the real deal and then you also saw it online.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's super cool. I think that's something that I like you called it wild nets as well. Like they just grew out.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it's perfect. I think
secret nets, wild nets.
Yeah, no, I think that's a cool name. I had heard that somebody was weaving these and word got out and people were looking for them. I've heard this story as well. It's cool that you were doing that.
Oh yeah, no, we totally experienced it, and then the ones we saw online, I don't know, there was kind of like a big gap because it was kind of like TreeNet Willie and Charlie's Webs were the big ones online. But yeah, I think Andrew Castle obviously was another one. TreeNet Studio now used to be Castle Nets. Was a big inspiration. I should also mention him, and he's kind of a local builder, and he's obviously one of the originators. It's kind of unclear to me, at least. Maybe they all know where it all came from.
Yeah,
I've heard conflicting things, but so I don't want to sound like leaving anyone out of that. But yeah.
Cool. So, what was one of your first nets? What was one of your oldest ones that you built? So, how long ago do you think you built your first net? I guess is the question.
Well, now I can talk about it because I'm just paranoid. I don't want to inspire people to. I don't want to be responsible for people doing it in the wild, and then someone gets hurt or
sure.
They just leave it up there and the tree grows around it, kills the tree or something like that, or plastic grows into the tree. So I don't want to be responsible for that. But I could talk about my very first net that I did in the wild, which is really kind of in my parents' backyard, so not really in the one of those like gray zone.
Yeah.
That was just like a simple net. I don't have it on my Instagram anymore, but yeah, it was my first net. It was a simple net in an oak tree. It was like 20 feet off the ground. Honestly, it turned out pretty good. I used no tree protection whatsoever on it, and I actually cut it down a month ago.
Okay.
Maybe a month and a half ago. And because I had checked in on it every once in a while because I didn't want it to get to the point where I was actually choking the tree. And I think so that one had been up there since COVID, so like 5 years. Okay. 4.5, 5 years.
Interesting.
And it was starting to, girdle the tree. Okay. So, but I was able to cut it and release all the paracord and, take it away with me before it got trapped in the tree, luckily.
Okay, cool. That's interesting for me. I'm trying to also kind of, the idea behind doing these interviews with people is I know Alonzo's running kind of a test right now on paracord and perimeter rope being exposed to UV. Well, maybe we get into that later in my geek net section.
Yeah.
But
that was black nylon in like a sunny area, but it was within the canopy of the tree, so I probably didn't get a ton of sun. Yeah. The result was that it was stiff, but it was not weak in any way. Okay. And the inside seemed to be completely unaffected. It was just the sheath that was affected. That became, when it gets stiff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
kind of crunchy.
That's yeah, exactly. Which, you kind of notice it when you're on the net, but when you cut it down, you really notice it because you can hold up a piece of paracord and it's like, sticking straight up.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, of all of the projects you've done so far, do you have a favorite?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like every project there's something that makes it unique. I don't know, like the one I did in England over the summer was cool because it's this like big net really high up in a tree, beautiful 500-year-old oak tree. And in the summer there, I'd like to see it in the winter, but in the summer it's beautiful to be amongst the leaves there. And then the one I did for my friend's house, the redwood one that I made a bunch of videos about, that one is super cool. I feel like that one might be the most like aesthetically appealing one. It's kind of
Okay.
hard when you're weaving nets to juggle the aesthetics of it with like the functionality of it, because then when you're just like trying to solve problems, it kind of can become a huge mess. So, but
Mm,
that one I felt like I actually nailed the aesthetics, even though it took forever. It was a huge
yeah.
pain to do. The one I just did in Sedona, that we just did in Sedona, is really cool in the way that, you know, it's my first kind of standalone with wooden posts that you could basically build this anywhere, jungle gym sort of thing. So that was really cool. And I I don't know. I feel like every project has like an interesting challenge, or I mean, I always seek out projects where, or maybe I create problems for myself because I find it interesting. But there's always like some challenge. So like the redwood one at my friend's place was like how to do the triple, what do they call
Yeah,
that?
figure
Figure eight,
eight
triple
thing.
weave, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And then I don't know. And then also that one was more about the challenge of telling the story. Like the filmmaking aspect was actually more interesting to me than the weaving. And
Okay.
then the England net, the bridge between them was the part that was like a huge headache, but also the part that was like I was thinking about as I was going to sleep every night. And then the Sedona one was cool because I wanted to. That was my first spiral, and then trying to do the spiral incorporated with the where the wall of the spiral then forms the backrest for the couch at the top. It's
Yeah.
kind of an interesting challenge. So I feel like on every project, there's like the things I feel like, yeah, I can do this, and then the part where I'm like, let's see what happens if
Yeah.
like what I don't know, but obviously I'm always nervous to tell my clients about that. But I'm
Yeah.
taking a chance. But I feel like I have to. I mean, I can always have an out. You know, okay, whatever, this didn't work. I'll just do something a little simpler. But I like to kind of have something that kind of pushes it a little bit on every project.
Yeah, see, I think this is what I mean by
But
like
yeah,
this
yeah,
being an artistic endeavor as much as it is, you know, there's the artisan which comes along and says, I produce this like this every single time.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
even though it's unique, it's not pushing kind of the boundary of what's been done before. And so the artistic
Yeah.
side comes in, and that's what I find super attractive. Is one, there is sort of like these, I don't want to call it rules, but this sort of standard, you know, use go like this, but then with inside of that, you can play on all sorts of different
Yeah,
levels,
for
and
sure.
I think that's super cool.
That's
So go ahead.
no, I'm just gonna say. I mean, that's like what's running through my head the whole time. Is like, is this an art form, or is this like, is it like building a house, or is it like a sculpture? Because then if it's like, if it's a sculpture, then the pricing obviously it's expensive, takes a ton of labor. That makes sense. If it's like building a house, it's like this is so like this takes so much labor for what you get out of it. So
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know. And so I kind of wonder. And then if it was like I was building a house, then the question is I should just do it way faster and stop taking all these chances. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
just like automate it and turn it into like a machine. But
yeah,
then if it's art, if you try and automate it, then what's the point of doing it? That's just like Van Gogh wasn't cranking out the same painting over and over and over again.
yeah.
That's not that
Right.
cool. So there's kind of a conflict there. And then what you were saying about working within the structure, that's something I kind of mentioned in the new weaving class because I did this demo net where I did strips pattern and then chaos pattern right next to each other. So I was able to, as I was weaving, I was thinking about it and juxtaposing it. And it was kind of like I drew this spectrum between like on one end, chaos is like super chaotic. You're just making it up as you go. And
Yeah,
then strips pattern is super orderly. You follow a formula and you
yeah,
get a cool net out of it. And then you have to kind of tackle problems as they arise because no net is going to be a perfect rectangle where you can just input, you know,
yeah,
perfect
yeah,
grids.
yeah,
So, but still, each there's a spectrum where it's like on one side it's just completely just like I don't even know what the next wrap. All I know is the next wrap, next wrap, next wrap, next wrap,
hmm
next
hmm
knot. Versus okay, I'm going to do this one out and back, and you have like a formula. Like I don't know. I don't want to get
yeah,
too abstract about it
yeah, yeah.
in
No,
that end way.
I,
Yeah.
I have noted when I started to do this kind of thing as well. I noticed, you know, my very first thing I did, and maybe that's like the masculine brain thing, wanting to like put
Mhm.
everything in, you know, perpendicular
Yeah, yeah,
90s.
yeah.
So on there I am like, okay, yeah, that's two finger lengths apart. This is two finger lengths apart. And then you start to pull it and everything shifts and you're like, oh my God, it was supposed to look like this and it's pulling and it's Yeah, what
Oh
you
yeah, yeah,
say,
yeah.
this really difficult thing between that chaotic and wanting to make it perfectly symmetrical and everything, and you're kind of battling between those two things. And my wife is kind of interesting because as I started to do it, I
Hmm.
was getting frustrated because it's not coming out exactly right. And she said, wow, it's so cool because it's so organic. And one cell is kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
bigger than
yeah,
the other, and that was bothering me. And she found
yeah.
it
Hmm.
to be really cool because it's not looking like it's stamped out like a
Exactly.
production net. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to give credit to Andrew Castle. I met with him like in the fall, and he totally inspired me about this very thing, where he's like, if we get it perfect, if we get the pattern perfect, with like a perfect grid, then why are we even doing it? Like, couldn't the machine do this like way faster? Like, what
Yeah.
is the point of us doing this? It's kind of pointless. And so he was saying that like what makes it so cool is that it's so dynamic, and so you don't know how it's going to end up, and that's what he kind of sells to his clients, which is
Yeah.
that this is going to be kind of an improvised thing. I mean, obviously, when it comes to like the bones of it, you can kind of predict that, but the actual
Yeah.
weave, I think he likes to keep it open ended. Anyways, I
Yeah.
found his approach to be pretty inspiring because it was something that I was so ashamed of, especially at the beginning of my weaving thing. Like,
Can't
I was
bring
just
the
like,
blueprint.
I was
Yeah.
this client's gonna think I'm totally like don't know what I'm doing, that I'm a total hack because I say it's gonna happen one way and then it happens another way and I can't fully predict it. But every time I
Yeah.
think next time I'm gonna get it right. Next time I'm gonna predict it correctly. It'll take this much time. It'll look like this. It'll look like that. But then and I just was always wrong. I had a great time weaving it, but there's this
Yeah.
part of me that was like the client knows that this is like kind of we're improvising here. I'm making it up as I go. But then when I met Andrew Castle, it was kind of, I don't know, cathartic and seeing his approach. And he's been doing it for so long, so I see him as like completely legitimate. And you never see yourself as legitimate. I
Yeah,
mean,
sure.
I don't
Sure.
really. Sometimes, imposter syndrome. But yeah, then it was like cool. It was like, oh, that's the part that makes this cool. Like I
Hmm.
thought that was like my problem that I needed to fix. Like it's going to use this much paracord. It's going to take this much time exactly, and I still am trying to draw equations of that. This
Sure.
much per
Sure.
hour, this much,
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
make it a science because if I'm going to fly out somewhere, I don't want to it seems like every project I'm down to the wire. So I don't
Yeah.
want to do that forever. But at the same time, that's kind of the beauty of it.
Yeah.
That's why I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Sure.
why I'm not making houses.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
it's the challenge of it and the part that's so unpredictable about it is what makes it cool. That's what makes it feel alive.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool. Yeah, so I wanted to ask too about, I know you're building a lot of sort of, the semi-permanent tree nets fixed and everything like that. And something unique that I've seen you doing that I haven't really seen anybody
mhm.
else is that you spent a lot of time, or at least there's quite a few projects like the diamond hammock that you build and your net chair and
Oh yeah,
everything like
yeah, yeah.
that. These are cool things, for people who maybe don't have a forest or something like that. These are, if they want to use, we'll call, I guess, tree net weaving techniques on other
Mm.
things, they're able to do that. And I think it's interesting that you're doing that as well. Do you build removable space nets or anything like this at all?
I've experimented with it a bunch. Basically, the problem was so space nets exist and they're cool, but personally, I don't really find them that interesting because a lot of times they're like triangles, but if there's no
Yeah,
backrest, like how are you gonna?
yeah,
And that's always the thing for me. I was like, how do I get a backrest? That'd be so cool if I could set it up with a backrest. That would be the cool. Like, so for me, that was like the part I was obsessing over, especially last year around this time. So that's what led to the hammock, where it's like, oh, what if we put a rigid element in here to kind of make it work? But then I was scared because I was like, if it's got to be strong,
yeah,
But
yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
so there was that, and I've done tons of experiments that I haven't made like videos about with like portable hammocks. The challenge is like for me currently how to not use ratchet straps and come up with a system that's like totally intuitive and easy and not super dangerous where anyone could just like and like tension it. I haven't been able to crack it, but that's the dream. If you use like a taut line hitch,
Hmm.
like something like that would, I don't know if you know
Yeah.
About this
Yeah.
off the top of your head, where you like,
I'm
and then it's just tight, and it's just like,
yeah.
fuck yeah. But the problem is that slips once you load it with weight. So, anyways, I've played around with a bunch of stuff like that, but I
Yeah.
haven't been able to crack it. I just moved on to the next thing, even though I
Yeah,
said
yeah.
I'll work on it. Yeah.
Yeah, that tensioning of the perimeter thing is something I have been like really going over in my head as well. Because what is, I came from like climbing and slacklining for a long time, and
Oh yeah.
how do we get this thing tight? Are we using Prusiks or ratchets or pulleys
Mm-hmm.
and then exactly what you
Mm-hmm.
said. How do we make this approachable for other people so that it's not like, oh man, I can't even get the perimeter together, because the weaving will just come on its own. But that very
Mm.
first structure, getting that thing nice and tight and set up and everything, yeah, I'm working on that kind of as well for myself. Like what is the
Oh
best
yeah, yeah,
way to
yeah.
do this?
I think everyone stresses about that. Yeah, yeah. With the course, someone was like, "Is it gonna?" I think a lot of people ask, "Will you say how to make the perimeter tight? Will you say how to make the perimeter tight?" Was a common question,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Anyways, whatever. I will say no more.
So
Yeah.
it's a work in progress. So I wanted to ask too about so when you're doing your projects, I guess do you typically work with other people, or are you doing most of this stuff on your own?
Um, I've mostly done it on my own, but recently I'm making more of an effort to bring on helpers because it can be really grueling.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
fun at first, but then once you get to the end, it's like, oh my god, this takes forever. But the challenge with the whole helper thing is the work is not regular enough to train someone and have them there all the time. So I
Yeah.
need to find like this weird in between person who's like available at the drop of a hat, but is willing to not be paid for like another 3-4 months at a time. You know what I mean? It's kind of random. And then also when you factor in travel, it's really hard to travel with someone. So the England net was great because I knew Kieran's really good, and I saw that he was in England and he was like an hour away or something and lived out of a van. I was like,
Yeah.
this is perfect. I just
Yeah.
call him up like, let's do this, let's work together. And he was a great partner on that. And so that one was great. But yeah, a lot of the times it's not really, I'm not successful. I don't have enough work yet to
Yeah.
mandate or make that feasible. But the Sedona one, I brought my cousin, I trained him up right before.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing because I always assume it's really easy, and then when I'm training someone, I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually kind of hard to just from scratch. So we had to invest a ton of time ahead of it because we didn't want to waste any time when we got there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of it's a challenge, but being alone sucks, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
Isolation sucks. Being alone sucks.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you do it yourself, you can ensure quality control. If you have someone else, that's one unpredictable element. And then if you're having to redo their work, huge waste of time.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Perfect. Okay, so
yeah.
for people that say, "Okay, I kind of want this. This looks cool for my kids." Um,
Uh-huh.
what do you do to make sure that this thing is kind of safe? And I'm thinking not only from the weaving type of stuff, but from the materials. Are you using like
Yeah,
rated
yeah,
climbing ropes and specific
yeah. Yeah,
type
yeah,
of
yeah.
things? And
Yeah, so when it comes to safety, I mean, that's the thing I worry about the most. And
sure,
when it comes to materials, I just try and keep it simple. I know paracord works. I know rope works. I don't use any recycled rope, even though I would love to do that. It's
yeah,
really tempting. I don't do it. Um, my paracord is from Knot and Rope Supply, my rope as well. But yeah, I just try and keep it simple. It's tempting to try and incorporate more elements, but anything you incorporate, this piece of metal, this wooden piece is a potential failure point.
yeah,
And I haven't been working with it for like 5 years. So I'm like paranoid to incorporate anything new. So I try to stick with like paracord, rope, sleeves are not really structurally critical.
yeah,
Eye bolts, just overdo it every single time.
yeah,
Half
yeah,
inch or more, or 5/8 inch. Don't do anything smaller than that. Forged, something that's rust resistant, because everything I'm always just thinking about how's this going to hold up in the long term.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah,
yeah,
and then on the safety front, when it comes to like the design, so that's the materials, and then on the way you design it, always overdo the side walls. They always want to pull down and they get super small. I've had to do it like a million times. I did it on the England net. Oh wait, this actually is super low. Let's add another rope here. And then it's like way more work to keep extending it higher, and it uses up rope. And then on the Sedona net, I don't know if you saw this, but on the top level, I did like a suspended ring in the middle, so it kind of curves inwards, but you can still have this opening to look at the stars. And that just because we were worried that kids would try and climb out and jump to the. I mean, who wouldn't, right? It's like jumping off the roof into the pool. So make that really hard for them. Like that would be almost impossible. You would have to really want to do that. I mean, yeah.
So with the talking about materials and being outside and stuff like that, what are you estimating a lifespan of something like this? I'm trying to find out that baseline. What is everybody saying? Okay, this is where we're going at.
Well, I'm not the best person to ask because I've only been doing it for 5 years and I haven't had any, like the one I just took down, that's been there for 5 years and looks like it could have lasted another 10, but who knows? From like, Tree Net Willie, Charlie's Webs, they pretty much all say like 5 to 10, and then you can keep it going with maintenance. If it's commercial, like getting a ton of use, it goes down to like 3 to 8 or something. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't built a net where it's would be classified as commercial use yet, I don't think.
Yeah.
But I hear that the colorful paracord is like goes faster. Polyester fades faster, but is actually stronger in the sun. Nylon doesn't fade, but actually doesn't do as well in the sun. In the end, I don't think it makes a huge difference. I definitely have noticed polyester fading. So like the knot and rope, like I used it in the first course, that's kind of faded. This like blue rope that I used. But I haven't noticed. Well, I tend to use like dark colors all the time. I don't really like colorful nets that much. So like I'll do it if a client wants to do it, but like any net that I'm doing for myself or my friends, I always am like, let's just do dark green, guys. Yeah, I love dark green. Because it's like even if that one fades, it still looks cool.
Yeah,
I always advocate for that. But I heard red. Tree Net Collective told me this. Okay. I don't know if this is a big secret, but they said that red is actually the one that goes the fastest in their experience.
Okay, well that's interesting to know.
Maybe there's a science behind that. And then Charlie's Webs has said that darker colors do better in the sun than lighter colors.
Yeah,
he's been doing it a while, so I believe him.
No, that's cool.
But have you seen that video of the polypropylene one? I think it's polypropylene. There's that one video where it just dissolves in someone's fingers, and I'm like, what is this material? So I can like stay away from it like the plague, because that's my nightmare. That keeps me up at night. Like, how did that happen?
This girl's name, well, maybe I shouldn't give it out, but I actually tried to get in contact with her so that I could do sort of like just an email interview with her to figure out what material did she buy, and possibly she thought she was buying something, but didn't realize she got. It's got to be polypropylene. It has to be, because that stuff.
I mean, that's just what someone in the comments said. But I've worked with polyester, I've worked with nylon, and it's nowhere near that. So I don't know what that is.
No, I was trying to get to the bottom of this because a lot of people had that question, and I haven't heard back from her yet. But hopefully, I can hear from her and kind of do case study on what it was exactly happened, because exactly that is the nightmare. You get all this work, cool, and you come back a month. She said that was 3 weeks.
Into this toxic. Okay, well, there's no way after 3 weeks that would happen to nylon or polyester.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of
whatever, I don't know what I'm talking about. This is the extent of my knowledge on this. I just stick with what I know. I don't take chances with that.
Yeah. I don't want to. Speaking with damage and stuff like that, have you had a net get damaged that you needed to repair? Or have you ever seen like a storm comes and a big branch falls through it and you need to repair it? If I had a net, would that be possible?
When it comes to my own nets, the only one I've had trouble with is the net for my friend, that redwood net. I actually just did a little fix to it. Some squirrels nibbled through the paracord. And apparently they do this on lawn furniture sometimes, that get material for their nest or something.
Okay.
I mean, it's a pretty easy fix. Actually, the experimental weave of that net made it harder to repair. So that was actually really dumb of me to do that pattern, because the Dreamcatcher edge thing.
Yeah.
Huge pain because it's one single continuous piece.
Yeah.
But he has crazy squirrel activity on his property. If
Mm.
you use like this rodent sheriff and you put it on the net, they don't really touch it, but you have to add it every once in a while. It's really only if you're in an area where the squirrels are just like absolutely nuts. I've asked other weavers, and no one I've asked has had this problem happen to them. So I don't know what it is about that specific area. But yeah, that's also something that keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, what if the
Okay.
squirrels are? Oh, but then on the in the advanced course, I cut down the net and like test cutting it in different areas, and so that was pretty enlightening because it's never going to have a catastrophic failure unless they go through the perimeter in a critical location.
Yeah.
But in the class, I'll upload like a video as like an ad for the course, but I literally am sitting on the net and I just go through the perimeter and it just goes like,
Yeah.
and then nothing happens because all the hitches hold the perimeter
Yeah.
in place. It's pretty nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I was friends were over here looking at a little net that I had built, and they're, concerned with safety type of stuff. And I, coming from the climbing background and the slackline stuff, I'm always thinking redundancy and how many times is this going to, how many backups do you have on everything?
Mm,
And was thinking that this is, I mean, you got to literally be at the tree and get through that connection point to have that corner drop. Because if you cut straight through the perimeter rope on most sections, it has so many knots that it's just
oh
you'll
yeah.
lose a little bit. But I mean, you got
It
to
popped
have
through like
major
two hitches on
problems.
either side.
Yeah,
And the thing is, when you add in sidewalls, that's like a second perimeter line
that's true.
because
Yeah, that's
any sort
holding
of
as well.
sidewall, yeah. So that's the one thing about that net I did on my friend's property. Luckily he didn't pay me for it. We were just doing it for fun. But that one's like, I could see if the squirrels hit this one spot, we're screwed.
Okay,
Like this,
interesting.
because I didn't have any sidewalls, because the perimeter, the net is like a floor and a sidewall in one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you about that. What are your thoughts on doubling that up? Because I am planning in spring to kind of build my first outdoor, fully
Mm-hmm.
semi-permanent net between trees, and I'm seeing people doubling perimeters and some people doing singles. And I mean, again, coming
Yeah.
with the redundancy thing, I like the idea of two, but then at the same time recognizing that essentially this is kind of impossible to have, a full
Yeah.
failure even if the perimeter gets cut. Do you
Yeah.
have
You
a
could just,
preference on that, like doubling your perimeter or leaving it as a single?
well, my attitude is just if there's no sidewalls, you should double it up. If there are sidewalls, don't double it up. The redundancy comes from the sidewalls is kind of the
That's
short answer.
actually, I never thought about that, but that's actually really true and a very interesting point is that your sidewall is sort of your double perimeter.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's totally
And
true.
rope is super expensive. And like, also, if you have a double rope, well, it's not a huge issue, but then you got to think about like hitches and constrictors on the double rope are not going to be as strong because it's
Yeah,
like a bigger thing that's tied around. Like the smaller it is, the stronger the knot will be for the
yeah,
hitch. So, you add in different problems. It's not a
yeah.
huge deal. Like, it's something to think
That's
about.
That's true. So I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you about eye bolts and things like this. I know some people are for it, some people they don't like it. So my
Yeah.
job is I'm a gardener, so I'm always messing with trees and doing all this kind of stuff and looking at it and researching about what are the effects on the tree. There's a ton of information coming from the side of wooden structured tree houses using eye bolts and things
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
And do you like them? Do you use them? What do you think about them versus wrapping the tree and using
Yeah.
stuff like this?
When I first got started, I was like so scared of eye bolts and any sort of piercing of the tree whatsoever.
Yeah,
But I've warmed up to it lately. Basically, there's the risk of infection to the tree. That's kind of like the major risk. The actual hole is not that big a deal. It's just like the possibility for an infection. But yeah, I think when it comes to wraps, well, just with tree nets in general, people have this conception that like it's just rope, like it's it's so like minor of an impact to the tree versus the tree house, which is going to be this huge thing. But it's like, no, like this is super high tension, like could possibly be worse for the tree. So it should be treated as like, if you're going to build it, you're kind of taking a risk in your tree. You're building something. Like if you were to build a house, there's going to be environmental problems that you're going to cause, because before there was nothing there, now this is a house. But I don't know, when it comes to eye bolts, in the class I just recommend, if you're going to use eye bolts and you're worried about it, I say there's a possibility for infection. If you're really worried about it, check it with an arborist, because an arborist will say do it this time of year, not this time of year.
Right.
But yeah, so I mostly use wraps, and I use eye bolts sometimes. I usually use wraps when there's going to be a lot of horizontal force, so like holds it in place. And then I use eye bolts for mostly like sidewalls, spirals, ramps, that sort of thing, where there's going to be a lot of like vertical force.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, like the floor is mostly horizontal force with a little bit of up or a little bit of down. And then the sidewalls are loaded mostly down, like a suspension bridge. It's going into the tower of the Golden Gate Bridge or whatever. So I'm always worried about that. So I started using eye bolts when it comes to that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's kind of a trade-off. And then when it comes to wrapping, there's blocks, there's partial wraps, there's like half and half. If you use like only blocks and you do like a partial wrap, it might slide down. One of my early nets struggled with this because it's only glancing the tree versus like a 360-degree wrap, but then whatever. And then if you use block, I know this is not very organized. I have the tree. I'm doing an updated tree protection video for the course, and it's like 12 minutes long, so that should have all the information in there. But yeah, it's nuanced, I guess, is the answer, and I don't have any solid answers about which one is best for every situation's different.
Interesting. Yeah, I also was sort of against the eye bolts thing. I don't really like this idea, but then I'm thinking, I do bonsai trees as a hobby, and I'm always drilling into the base of them with screws and things like that to hold branches down. And they're in there for a couple of years. You take it out, there's nothing wrong with the tree. So exactly, you do have the concern of infection, and yes, you are interacting with the tree. So
the thing about eye bolts is like, think about if you're doing blocks, the surface area of each block against the tree. So let's just say it's like 2 inches wide and you use 8 blocks. 8 times 2 is 16 inches. Was that like a 1.5 foot?
Yeah.
That's technically choking the tree. But if you do the bolt, it's only going in 1/2 inch or 5/8 of an inch through the living layer and into the wood, the heartwood at the center. So as long as you don't get an infection, eye bolts are always better.
I actually kind of came to the same conclusion. Yeah. I came to that same conclusion that if you,
the fear of infection is just so. I don't want to have someone call me, "Hey, you've totally fucked up my tree," like 3 years down the line. That's like a nightmare scenario.
Yeah,
it's like I don't want to risk that. So if I am going to use it, I like do my due diligence. I reach out to an arborist. That sort of thing.
So then for the materials that you're using to actually construct the net, we were talking a little bit about that debate between nylon or polyester or something like that. I think everybody's sort of standard between those two. Definitely trying not to use polypropylene and things like this. But have you experimented with any kind of other materials like Dyneema or like I'm not sure who it is right now. I know recently they've been posting a lot of pictures using like 1-inch nylon webbing to build the net. It was a totally different aesthetic.
Tree weaves.
Yeah, Tree Weaves.
And Tree Net Collective has also done that as well.
Yeah.
And I'm sure all the other people have tried it. I just stick with paracord and rope. I don't know. I always wanted to play around with like natural fibers, like hemp or whatever, but then there's like the rotting issue and doesn't last that long. But I don't know. Part of me is like, maybe we should just rebrand nets to be like, this will last the summer. Let's use natural fibers instead, and because that's kind of cool, because then you're not using all the plastic. But the liability thing, it's like climbing. It's like there's a reason climbing gear. They're not saying like, hey, this is made out of like recycled.
Yeah.
No climber wants to see that. maybe after being processed like 5 million times. But yeah, with the webbing thing, that seems kind of cool. I have no idea. I feel like it'd be more comfortable to walk on, but then I don't know how you control the direction of the webbing, so it's not in the vertical position. And I don't know. It looks really cool, but I've never experienced a net like that, and I never experimented with it. But I think
Yeah.
it's exciting.
Have you done indoor nets as well?
I actually haven't done any indoor nets. I've like there's I'm talking to someone right now. We might do an indoor net. But no, I haven't done any. I've here it's basically the exact same thing. Just need to get solid anchors
Yeah.
and
I was just
there's
wondering
yeah,
if you would consider for an indoor net, would you change up your materials? I mean,
that would be interesting. Yeah.
I don't think that the natural materials, unfortunately, from like diameter size, the paracord being 4 mil, if you get a
Mhm.
4 mil hemp rope, for example, like that
Yeah.
goes under tension, unfortunately, like the tensile strength of those things, they're nowhere even
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
So you
Well,
would have to
that's the
use
problem, isn't it?
massive diameter ropes to get the same amount of
Yeah.
strength. And then it's like, what are we doing
It's
here?
not that comfortable. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Great. Have you ever integrated any sort of like prefabricated nets? Because I've had people, friends, as
Mhm.
I've started playing with this, they're like, "Well, why don't you just buy a net and weave it in the tree?" Like, okay, well, from like a speed aspect, that would be fantastic. But this
Yeah.
is, I'm not a production factory. I'm viewing this as an
Yeah.
art
Yeah.
piece. However, I don't think it's a bad idea, and I think it could be interesting to take pre-cut pieces, maybe like build organic trails with chaos stuff in between, so you have like this
Yeah.
mix type of thing. Have you ever used any prefabricated nets for sidewalls or anything?
I've never used a prefabricated net but I always want to find one to play around with it. But everything I go online, I'm like, oh, this is great. It's so cheap on Amazon. And then everyone in the comments, it broke after 5 minutes. And I'm like, well, that's not great for what I'm trying to do. And it's like, if I want something that's actually strong, I have to pay a decent amount because it's made from
Yeah,
these like specialty companies for like tree houses. And I'm super cheap.
yeah,
And if I know I'm not going to get an obvious return from it, like I will, if a client asks for it, I would be like, yeah, let's do it. Let's install it. And it's from a trusted source. But for my own experiments, I try and keep it really cheap because I want to just have the freedom to experiment and not feel like this experiment costs $500. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Or
yeah.
I just want to be able to play around with it. But actually, last year, actually, no, it was like a year and a half ago, it's the hand pan in the tree net video. And that one, I actually experimented with a prefabricated net and I still have this dream of like if I can find a way to manufacture paracord nets at home, and then like prefabricate them and then bring them on site, that would save a ton of time. So I was kind of playing around with that, where I
Hmm.
prefabricated it, kind of worked. I don't know, it's kind of unpredictable, and then it took forever to make it at home, but I still have hope for that. But like you said, would it kill the magic if I could actually figure it
Yeah,
out? I don't
yeah,
know. But some people would probably say, yeah, that would suck if you had a machine making it. That totally kills the point. But another side of me thinks, but then we could shift. I mean, for me, I could shift my attention from the weaving, which is cool in its own way, to focus on the rigging. And that becomes the area where we can kind of develop it and do some really cool stuff,
yeah,
where it's like rig it up and make these crazy shapes and not being limited to, yeah, you did this crazy huge shape. Now you got to weave every last wrap. It
yeah.
just changes the focus of it. So it would just be
Understand.
different.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so we're pushing time again here, so I want to go ahead and get
Oh,
this
yeah.
get down here to the end here. What do you got going on? Any new projects, things we're going to see online anytime soon?
Oh,
Something
yeah.
new?
Yeah. So my current project right now is the advanced weaving course. I've been working on it forever. The first course took me like a month, 2 months to do. This one I've been doing since the fall. I'm very impatient. So I finished shooting in like November and I've just been editing it ever since, but I've been traveling a lot. So it's been kind of a challenge, obviously self inflicted challenge, but still. So it's just taking forever. The first course is 2 hours long. This one's 4 hours long. It's going to cover strips, chaos, rings, and portals, and just like all the things that I wanted to include in the first class, but didn't really have time to do. So it's going to be like a part two sequel.
Okay.
And that's the major project right now. The Sedona net was great to get back out there and be weaving again, but unfortunately, I find I spend a lot of my time these days editing, like
Mm.
which is kind of
Yeah.
funny. Like I feel like I spend more time editing than I do weaving, but I don't know. I like the idea of teaching classes. I feel like to get more people weaving, I could really have more influence than nets that I could just weave on my own. I'm limited by my labor. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the main project right now. Summer's coming up. There's a few potential leads that I'm talking to right now, but all my focus is basically going on to this class.
Okay.
Also hoping to release it with Spanish and like play around with AI
Yeah.
to dub it and all that. It might sound like crap. I don't know, but I think it's a fun experiment. But those are kind of the main projects.
Okay, cool. So how do tell me, I'll link all this down in the video below, but how do people
Yeah.
find you? How do they get in touch with
Oh,
you?
I have Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I also have a website, canopycraft.co, not .com. That was taken. So
Oh,
.co.
okay. Okay.
And yeah, my Instagram and all those are just Canopy Craft. I'm sure if you search that, you can find it, or canopy.craft if it's giving you trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my social media right there.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, I think that's probably I could sit here and talk about this for a really long time because I have so many. It's really cool for me to be able to talk to someone else because I'm really out here alone. I don't know anybody around, that does something like this. So this
Yeah.
is super interesting to me. But man, hey, I really appreciate you taking your time and being willing to have this conversation with me. I hope that anybody that watches this gets some value out of it as well. And also wanted to personally say thanks for all of your efforts with the editing and putting things online because that literally helped me get to be exactly where we are right now. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well,
All
we
right.
will talk to you soon and look forward to seeing the stuff that you got coming out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
All right.